Um, this is the first installment of a new series that I'm trying to do called Tasting Notes, where I have wonderful guests to join me to talk about, I guess, food, music, everything. So for the very first episode, I have a wonderful guest, Valentina Solfrini. Welcome, Valentina.
Thank you.
It's,
Thanks.
it's funny because I think it's the first time we're actually speaking in English to each other. Because Valentina is obviously
Yeah,
Italian.
that's true.
But I'm fairly positive that Valentina's English is great. So I think it will be a wonderful conversation. So, in case you guys don't know Valentina, she has an amazing page called L'Appetito, right? The appetite. You have it both in Italian and it's an English page, right?
It's in English.
Yes, and Valentina. Well, actually, I'll let you introduce yourself in a minute, and maybe you can tell us what your page is about. I just wanted to tell our listeners that we met in a quite funny way. Valentina and I, we actually met on Substack, which is, I think, a great testimony that this platform is great for connecting people that are into the same kind of things, because we didn't know each other from Italy. We didn't know each other from anything other than Substack. And I had come across her page because obviously Substack suggests similar pages to what you're into. And then I think I put out a note at some stage and you wrote a comment to it. And I got a notification. Valentina Solfrini commented on your post, and I looked up, I clicked on the notification, and the comment wasn't there. And it disappeared, and it was very funny. So then I reached out to Valentina and I said, "Oh, did you put a comment on my post?" And she was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I was like, "I cannot see it." Anyway, that thing happened about 10 times in the next 20 minutes, but that was an excuse for us to start chatting, basically, and to realize, that we have a lot of passions in common, and among which music. We'll talk about that too, other than food. And so that's how we connected. But I promise I won't be doing all the talking because I can do that. So why don't you, Valentina? Why don't you introduce yourself very quickly, just who you are, what you do, and what page is about?
Actually, I just wanted to say on the power of Substack is that actually the note that I commented on, it was your note, but because I think that right now the Substack algorithm works pretty well, so I wasn't following you or anything. I just saw this note, and you were saying something about, I think it was like a pasta, like an Italian pasta with pistachio or something like that. And I commented on it, which to me, doing that on Substack, like you can do it because it's a digital world, but it kind of feels like you're kind of blasting into a room when you weren't exactly invited and just joining a conversation. And then I commented, and then we found out that we knew a lot of musicians.
Yes.
Like we knew both, like we both knew the same people, and that was kind of funny to me. So nice. Anyway, I commented on that specific post because I myself have a page of Italian food. I mean, it was mostly born as a page to talk about Italian food and culture, and then it kind of borders into Mediterranean food as a whole, because I don't really know much. I mean, I'm not too close to the north of Italy, even though I'm technically in the north. I'm at the very limit, I guess, between north and south. I'm in Le Marche.
Okay, so tell us where you're from exactly, because I realize some people mightn't really be familiar with this part of Italy.
Gradara. So it's a tiny village. It's a medieval village with a huge castle, and it sits exactly on the border between two regions of Italy, which are Romagna and Marche.
Okay, hold on a sec. I'm going to show this on the map because people might not look. So that's Emilia Romagna there, and that's the Marche there.
Exactly.
And so you're kind of close to San Marino, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
I'm like on the seaside, which is nice.
On the seaside. It's funny because when you first told me when we were chatting that you were from the Marche, I had a very different idea of what the accent from the Marche sounds like. Then when I first heard your voice, to me sounded much more close to the Romagnolo accent,
Because that's what we are. I mean, we are really literally on the border. And I fully speak Romagnolo. There's no doubt. Sometimes people also say, "Oh, are you from Bologna?" Because I live there, and I definitely do not have a Marche accent. But technically, I'm in Le Marche.
No, it's interesting because I think people sometimes don't realize the variety and originality there is in in
Yeah.
Italy, and how borders, even regionally speaking, sometimes are completely constructed. Because again, to me sounds like, even though technically speaking you are Marchigiana, right?
Yeah.
That to me sounds more closer to the Romagnola culture. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute because I want to know
Yeah.
more about food from that part of Italy. But tell us more. You were talking about your page, right?
Yeah. I still mostly do stuff about Italian cooking and Italian food, and I also like to write maybe essays about on that topic. I feel like people have very strong opinions on Italian food, reasonably so. But as I am currently living in France, in the Occitania region, I do talk about the food from this area, which is very strikingly similar to the food from Romagna.
Oh, okay.
So, actually, like the land is the same. We grow the same products, we have the same weather, we have the same temperatures, we have the same kind of soil. And we share quite a fair bit of culture. So it's kind of like if it belongs in the Mediterranean, I will talk about it,
Okay.
kind of, if I feel like it. But it's still mostly an Italian page.
So this is the page is called L'Appetito, right? For the people who joined now, please go and check it out and subscribe to Valentina's page. It's beautiful. But I wanted to ask you one more thing. Obviously, one of the first things that caught my attention when we started connecting was obviously your photography, right? It's like when someone asks you, "What do you do, Valentina?" What do you answer? Is it a photographer or is it
I'm
a...
a photographer. I'm
Okay.
a photographer. I've been a professional photographer and right now videographer as well for the past 12 years.
Yeah.
So like all my career has been that.
And
And
do you work only in food with photography, or...
I have started in food. It is it is still my favorite thing to do. Right now here in France where I am, it's a place where there's a lot of musicians. So I started doing videos for musicians as well.
That's great.
But I photographed several cookbooks. I was a teacher for 5 years of photography and food photography at an American university in Florence.
Oh, wow.
I did ads, I did magazines, I did a lot of stuff, mostly in food, really working. And I worked a lot with vineyards, like with vines, with wine producers. I worked quite a lot with um, agencies, communication agencies working specifically with wine. And
Okay.
that I think that was the best part of the job.
So this is about photographing like publicity for wine brands and producers and stuff like that. Is
It's
that
what you call storytelling. Yeah.
okay? So, but tell me, I'm curious about this, right? So you trained as a photographer. How does one become a food photographer? I'm curious about that.
That was like nowadays, I wouldn't even know. I mean, I think that nowadays it really depends on what you want to do. But back at the time, it wasn't really a thing yet. So it was kind of something that Instagrammers built when the thing was starting out. It really was a phenomenon that was born on Instagram. Say with the first food blogs, circa 2012, when you started really having the first very famous people,
Uh-huh.
who are like some of them are still thriving today. One of the people I worked with and who I think is an incredible professional is Eva Cosmos Flores. She's still doing workshops and commercial work, and she was one of the first. And there's many others, Linda Lomellino, who got very big on that kind of dark, moody thing that was going on back a few years back. And all these very talented people that started showing up in Instagram kind of turned it into, kind of renewed it as a job. And
Mm.
nowadays, in the context of content creation, um, it got back maybe to a more of a commercial side, I think. And there's
But wait a second. So before the Instagram and the blog wars, I mean, food photographers existed, right? For cookbooks and stuff like that. But you're saying it wasn't quite as big as it
I
became?
think
Or...
I think it kind of fell into the commercial kind of training. You would do a setup as you would do a publicity.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So you mean it was less arty, sort of? You could say it was a less arty side to it, maybe.
I don't know. I think actually it was. I love to collect old cookbooks. You know, like
Mm.
from the 90s, from the 70s, and you have some beautiful staged photography in there. Of course, the challenges were different because you were shooting film. I think that we tend to forget that before, uh, maybe even before, maybe even before 2010. I don't know. I mean, professional digital photography isn't that old.
Yeah.
The quality of the film was actually unmatched up until kind of recently. So right now, you know, you can basically just try and see what happens. You can just try a lot, and you can
Yeah.
even learn a lot on your own. There's
That's the thing.
there's a few technical rules that you need to know if you're doing it as a job. So the specs for printing or some very specific things like, for example, knowing even what you're taking a photo of. Um, but I wouldn't say that back before the Instagram time there was no food photography. It was maybe just less. It just maybe got into more of a advertising kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
And so yourself, but you trained as a photographer, like other than food photography. I mean, just
Kind,
in general.
kind of. You know, in high school, people listening, maybe they might not know this, but in high school, people like you're supposed to choose what to do, right? So you can go to art school, you can go to science school, right?
In Italy, it is like that, at least.
Yeah.
Yes. We
So
have sort of different addresses already towards science, towards the humanities, towards arts, or stuff like that.
and I went to art school, and we had a beautiful, beautiful photography lab, and it was film photography. So I learned film photography in high school, and oh, we have a comment. So interesting. I buy so many cookbooks just for the photos. The market is flooded with gorgeous cookbooks, but I do too. I definitely have cookbooks that I never cooked from,
Yeah.
that I buy because they're beautiful. You know.
And it's amazing inspiration, right?
Yeah.
Whether, for me, inspiration, even just to read the recipes, doesn't necessarily mean I want to cook them, but the photography and also I think these days there's so much storytelling, right? Whether it's in the photography or in the text or in the recipes, it's a big part of it for sure.
Yeah.
But sorry, you were saying, so in this school, high school, this where was this?
Urbino.
In Urbino. Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful town. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And back then there was a school that the school over there, the art school, was considered to be exceptional. So it would take me 2 hours by bus to go there every
Oh,
morning.
you have to go every day because that's in Umbria, right? It's in a different region.
Kharkiv, but it's
Oh, it's in
far.
Mad. Sorry, of
Like
course.
no
Yes. Yes.
connection. So our parents, like there were three kids from my town going up to Urbino, and because there were no buses, there were three parents who would take turns, like my parents and these other kids. They would take turns taking us to the bus stop that was like some 20 minutes away at 6 in the morning. I can never thank them enough. That was amazing. That
Yes.
was great. But anyway, we get a very good art education. And then I started working straight away because as soon as I got out of high school, I first started working at a photography studio not far from where I lived. And then I moved to New York.
Okay. So that's where you learned your English.
Yes.
Makes
I
sense.
stuck with this accent. Um,
Yeah, but you don't sound like an average Italian trying to speak English, that's for sure.
that's pretty good.
So so wait a second. So you started working immediately, but in food?
No, that was actually they were doing fashion.
Okay.
But it was nice. It was like a street fashion small brand, and we were a small team. It was very nice. And then I just kept building experience, and then I just decided to pick up the camera by myself and start doing some experiments. And actually, it all started in New York because at one point I was living back then. I was living in Manhattan. It was possible. It was 2010. I don't know. Anyway, I was living close to the Bronx. It was amazing. I loved it. It was the East Side, and one day I was just coming back home, and there was this lady sitting outside the building. You know, she was smoking her cigarette, and I can't remember why we started talking. And she was like, "Yeah, I mean, you Italians, you really know how to enjoy life. Look at us here, stuck in our offices. Like, I get home at night so late, I never feel like cooking. I feel like whatever I eat has no flavor, but you guys can enjoy food, you know." And she started going on this tangent about how Italians can just enjoy life. And I was like, I never really thought of it that way. I never really thought I was 22, 21, 22, and I never thought that like walking out my house and picking my own zucchini was a luxury.
Mm.
It actually was. So I was like, okay, maybe this is something that can interest people over here. Why not start a blog? I mean, I was still trying to figure out which direction to take with my work, and then it won a Sever award almost immediately after,
Oh, okay.
and that kind of launched my career. It was 2013, and all the people who won Sever awards that year just got careers, basically. It was
Careers
very
as
powerful.
creators or
Yeah, everybody worked in food. Even
yeah.
the guys who won that year, he won Best Writing. His name is Josh Scher, and he has a YouTube video that's called Mythical Morning. I don't
Oh,
know if you know about
I
them.
don't
It's
know it. No. Yeah.
and and now he runs this YouTube video. They have millions of views, and
Oh
they're
wow.
in Los Angeles, and you know, it worked. They're great. They're a lot of fun.
But
That,
for you, that kind of fed more into the photography food stuff later, or it was two separate things?
what?
The winning this award with your blog, you know, because you weren't really working with food photography at that stage yet, right?
No, started later.
Okay, so but they were kind of two separate things, or you kind of developed it at the same time, more or less, or
It kind of went together. Thank you, James Gabriel. That's the guy you
it,
guys need to follow. You need to follow him, the guy who just commented.
yes, and you're right. She does have a wonderful photographic style.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But yeah, then I just started, and actually, I think that I started in the best way possible. Like, I absolutely had no idea what I was doing, and I just kept on winging it, and that's what usually works. I know it's weird to say it, but you know, if you can afford to just keep trying and winging it until you can. And actually, I had an office job. You know, at some point, I decided to go back to Italy, and I just got an office job because you know I wanted to make money anyway, normally like everybody. But then I had like when I came home from work, I would dedicate the time I had to my blog.
Yeah.
You know, researching recipes, trying to take photos, maybe taking in the winter when it was dark, just the weekends. So I was dedicating a lot of time to doing this, and then and today everybody's like, "How did you build such an audience on Instagram?" Because it's a very legitimate question, you know. But back then it was organic.
Yeah. So
So you
your
know,
Instagram page is a different name, though, right? What is it called again?
Valentina Hortus.
Hortus, yes, and you have a substantial amount of followers there.
I mean, I don't know. It's not that many in the grand scheme of things,
I
but
mean, you know, it's not a million, but still, it's
and I feel like we all worked for it, and it turned out well. And I love every single person who, you know,
And is
is
that something you're still doing a lot to Instagram, or is it a little bit
a
faded?
little less, a little less, just because life.
Yeah. So, but you were mentioning, and we connected also talking about music because you're saying that you kind of ventured now into the world of working with music for photography and video as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How did that happen?
That happened because at some point I started attending these concerts of trad French music,
So
and
already in France or in Italy?
in Italy, because there's
Okay.
a lot of that in Italy. And I took pictures of some artists and concerts, and then some of the artists noticed me and they were like, "Hey, do you want to work together?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I came over here because funnily enough, a lot of them live in the region. I mean, there's some specific places where a lot of musicians live here in France.
Where you are? Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me one thing. What are the main differences between photographing food and musicians?
Oh, oh. Well, I do mostly concerts, and actually, if I do, I've done work for album covers or for publicity and stuff like that, which is in studio kind of,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of fun because it's kind of like photographing. It's kind of the same principle as photographing food. You know, you're just trying to do a composition, except then you have also the person's personality that you
Mm-hmm.
to show through. And I actually love it because so far people said, "Wow, that's amazing. I love myself in your photos." So that's the one difference. I mean, you're working with actual people who, you know, have an opinion and might not like what they see. There's always a risk. And
We have a comment there from James.
oh yeah, food and music are so similar. They are primal forces that hit our senses and connect us. We don't need prior knowledge to know we love it, but if we do have prior knowledge, we can draw through lines and comparisons.
I mean, look,
That's true. That's very
yeah.
true.
I mean, that's what I talk about in my page. I mean, it's all about music and food because they're
And
my two
think I
favorite
think that
things.
the only reason why I can do I think a decent job at photographing those people is that I love that music. I love the work and I
Yeah.
know it very well. But same with food because you know I was telling earlier about you need to know what you're photographing. I
Mm.
remember this huge case where there was a panettone that needed to be photographed, and it was like one of those luxury panettone that cost like an insane amount of money that needed to. It was like maybe from a I don't know. It was like some very big Milan.
Sharia kind of.
I can't remember who that was, but I remember that someone took this picture of a panettone sliced because you need to see the inside, and this panettone had a huge bubble in the middle, and they
Oh,
cut it and photographed it exactly where the big bubble was, which was technically it's a failure.
a defect. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so that wasn't like the best thing. And then people that was published regardless, so it somehow managed to get through.
Oh,
Uh,
really? And nobody
Google,
knows that? That's insane.
nobody said anything. They went into print. They legit went into print, and then everybody was like, "What were you doing? What is this? Like, can you not see it?" But of course, a photographer, a commercial photographer, would not know that that is something that you're not supposed to photograph. I mean, why would they know? It's not
Yeah.
their job.
Just for the people that don't know, panettone these days is considered the pinnacle of baking technique and skill. So obviously, having a hole means that something hasn't gone properly in terms of like the whole process of baking and making a panettone. But yeah, that's definitely very interesting. You know, I was talking to a music photographer a while ago and asking her, "Why do you love so much taking pictures of musicians?" And she was like, well, you know, the amazing thing of taking pictures of people playing is that they get in such an intense space
Oh yeah.
and they are the best subjects because they have no idea they're being photographed. Because if I ask them to pose, they're like, oh, useless.
Yeah.
They're the most useless models ever. But when they get on stage with their instrument or singing, whatever, then it's like every second there are incredible pictures to be had, you know, because it's such an intense space that people are into. I don't know if you agree or it's something that you see.
Oh yeah, yeah, completely. That's why I actually prefer. I mean, I love taking pictures of musicians for their publicity work because it's I get to do what I do with my normal photography.
Yeah.
But concerts really have an energy, and even the adrenaline when making a video of knowing that you only have that moment. Like if you
Mm.
miss it, that's on you. And but yeah, they're so into it. I feel that people are so beautiful, and because it's a specifically music for dancing, I feel that even the dancers, even the people who dance are so beautiful because you have this kind of energy, like this kind of exchange of energy between the players and the dancers, and they kind of feed each other.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, I promise I'm gonna make you stop talk about the photo stuff because I want to talk about some food stuff more in detail. But one more question because I'm curious myself, and I'm sure some people are curious too. So if you have a gig, right, like a book gig, you're doing some photos for a cookbook, fancy
Yeah.
cookbook. Can you just like describe what a day looks like in a scenario like that? I don't think many people know how it works. Like, is the food made there? Does anyone eat the food? How much time? Just
I
curious.
will say something. I didn't actually should have prepared this, but I have a book right here. I love this book. Oh, so this is Pomegranates and Artichokes by
Oh
my
yes.
Sagar.
Yeah.
She's an Iranian girl who has been living in Rome for like 20 years now. And this book we did, this is her book, and we did it together with a team of other five-ish people.
Yes.
I love it. It's such a beautiful book. And
By the way, go and find her on Substack too. She has a great page and
yeah,
look
Substack.
her up. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a book that I've done, and then I recently, actually just a couple months ago, I finished photographing a book, the next book by Amber Guinness. That's going to be her third book about winter Tuscan food. So, and the two experiences were very similar, except for this book, I was not photographing, I was directing.
Oh.
Directed the work for this book. So, for example, for this specific book, I'm like, okay, today we take pictures of these 20 recipes. So we start with this recipe because it's the easiest or the simplest. And then you know that in 20 minutes, this specific food needs to get out of the kitchen. And then when we're done with this, we need to set the set while the food is cooking. So it's going to take us this amount of time to do this. So, planning this was basically just directing people into
So
the.
you were not taking the photos, it was
I
someone
was,
else taking the
I was
photos?
making the sets. So like
Okay.
what I was doing was choosing maybe, the kind of background that goes in with these colors, the kind of props that go with the food.
But hold on a sec though. So did you have a stylist or you were doing that job too?
I was a stylist.
You were the stylist.
I was,
Okay, that makes sense.
Sagar
So
was
what is the stylist? Just for people who don't know, what does the food stylist do?
the stylist decides on the props, mm, takes care of the props. The props are all the items that go into the shoots, into the scene, and of course we decide how to put the food into the plate and how that is supposed to look, like color wise or style wise, image wise. And for example, there are a lot of stylists that, like, there are some stylists that prefer a very neat thing, um and maybe they place every single leaf with tweezers onto the food, and that is something that you usually need to do with publicity. So, for example, if you're photographing McDonald's, like McDonald's burgers, there is going to be a stylist who has like a syringe with the sauce, and they're going to put like, I'm assuming, I don't know why, I'm assuming they're a male, but whatever. Uh, they're going to put sauce with a syringe in specific spots. They're going to add the little tiny speckles of onion with tweezers. They're going to just burn the cheese, like melt the cheese with
Blowtorch.
blowtorch. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have like French words mixing in my head,
It's okay.
and I'm more like, I have a bunch of leaves. I'm like, I toss it. I like food to look a little more, and then of course it depends, because if you're doing a commercial shoot, you need to be very precise.
Yeah.
But if you're doing something more like food that is intended to be eaten on the daily, like we all knew that these peppers weren't going to look extraordinary, but this is
Mm.
what you're supposed to look, and I like that. I like knowing that if I cook, this is what I will
That's
get in the end.
what it looks like. And so the writer is there with you, and you're all the time
Yeah,
collaborating with the
yeah, yeah,
person.
yeah, for
She
sure.
says, no, 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 I don't like this, or I prefer a bit of that, or can we do the blue one, or does it change? Are people very opinionated normally about this kind of stuff? Or
Oh, usually, I mean, from my experience, people just work with people they trust.
yeah,
And actually, I'm very grateful to everybody who put in a good word for me, because, like, people just trusted me and it worked out pretty well, I have to say.
yeah,
Um, so, like, this is deciding how to put this recipe, like how to make it look in the photo, was like a combined effort of me and Sagar. But
yeah,
um, it's an author's book. It's her book. So
Yeah.
it's the author's book. So they always have the final say on what. So we do the scene, and then the author will say, "Okay, I like this," or "I would like to change something," because it's obviously their book. So to answer your question very briefly, on a set you will have a stylist, a photographer, a cook, a couple helpers that will help the cook and or the stylist, because usually it's the kitchen that's really doing the power work, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The kitchen has to push out maybe 20 recipes per day. It's
That's
usually,
the standard kind of 20 a day.
yeah, because usually you spend 5 days photograph, like you close yourself into some place, villa or whatever, with a garden, and you spend 5 days photographing. So that means an average of 20, 15, 20-ish recipes per day. And you want to go, and you want to really like go at it the first few days, because at the end you're tired and you want to make sure to finish on time. So it's mostly like working. It ends up being like a sort of 9 to 5 with some extra. I mean, it's kind of demanding, because then you have to download the pictures, look at the pictures the very
Yeah.
same day, because then if something doesn't work, you need to know immediately, so you have time
And
to.
do it again. Yeah.
And
And for each, so when you're saying it, imagine we're doing one dish, right? They prepare it, it comes out. I mean, I presume you don't have a huge amount of time to take the photo, right? Because food also kind of changes as it gets cold, or
yeah,
so.
yeah.
But do they prepare 3 or 4 staggered of the same dish, or is it just like one per?
Oh,
You know what I mean?
one. But what you do is you are smart in preparing the set beforehand. So
Okay.
you prepare the set, take a photo of the set to see how it will look with the food in it. And then if I have something that ruins quickly, and actually pasta is one of the things that like changes it. You have maybe you have less than 1 minute to photograph it.
Yeah.
It's worse than ice cream. Like ice cream, if you're not under the studio lights, it will last a little longer.
Yeah. Crazy.
And sometimes ice cream is actually fake.
Yeah. So I heard. Yes.
But yeah, no, usually I try to prepare the set beforehand. And James is asking, do you always work with natural light? I do, unless I really have to use artificial light. Does the stylist create the props and supply ceramics, flowers in advance? Yes. Normally it's up to us to bring the stuff. Yeah. I either bring my own stuff, I have a big collection, or when I worked with Amber's book, there was a very talented young stylist. She's called Benedetta Canale, and she brought her own things. Then Amber had a lot of her own stuff. That sometimes that's a concerted effort. Like everybody will say, everybody, if you have stuff, bring it. Because if you bring 100 items, you think that's going to be enough. It's not.
Yeah.
Not going to be enough. Can one volunteer to be set to help and help eat all the food?
Yeah. What
Yeah,
happens to the
well,
food?
oh, we eat it, but we have so much, we have to give it away. Like people will bring it home to their families, people give it away to their friends. It's because at the end you have so much food, and that's why you try to make like 1 or 2 portions.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just it's also to contain the costs a bit. But you know, we absolutely always try our best to not waste anything.
Waste.
We
Yeah.
don't use we don't use glues, we don't use stuff, we don't use. That's why I prefer to just keep it natural. You know.
Okay, no, that's great. That's a great insight into this world in case people are wondering. I want to steer it a little bit towards a more food conversation because.
I get my charger. I hear you, but I
Oh,
get my.
okay. Yes, yes. Yeah, it's kind of weird how Substack doesn't seem to let you do this other than on your phone, or I'm actually on the iPad, which is quite handy
Yeah, I
too.
wish I could do it from the computer, but
I don't think you can do it on the computer. I'm not entirely sure. This is my first time anyway.
I can't do it on the computer.
No, I think you have to be on the app.
You have to be on the app, yeah.
Yeah, so I heard. Maybe there's a way to hack it. But anyway, what I wanted to ask you is if I'm curious about the food from your part of the world because it's something that I'm not super familiar with. So if you could, can you tell me in 3 dishes what is the food of your area?
Oh, okay. Do you want food from Marche or Romagna? Because I consider my area to be Romagna.
Okay, but exactly where you grew up, like the food that you would identify with the most.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a mix because my area is mostly a mix of Marche and Romagna. It's like that in between where the two mix.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Number one, I would say pasticciata con le erbe.
Okay, tell us about.
Pasticciata is basically just a roll of beef, veal, beef.
Okay,
It's usually beef.
like
That
a
you,
rollatina, like a rollata type of thing.
yeah,
Okay,
like
so like
a
a thin,
no?
thin stretched and then rolled up with stuff inside.
Yeah, that you first cook on the like like that, not
Okay.
cook on, and then you cut it in slice and you finish it in a tomato sauce. You
Oh,
finish.
okay. So it's almost like braised at the end.
I got an airplane in my apartment.
Oh, I
Sorry.
can't hear it actually. Yeah, it's fine.
So yeah, you basically finish in this tomato sauce that cooks for a long time. The meat becomes very tender, so you have these slices of meat in this very thick tomato sauce, and then you serve it with very very garlicky pan fried wild greens that you like get in the fields. You just go out with a bag, and you get
Uh-huh.
poppy leaves, mm, um, dandelion leaves. The kind of edible greens that are just
Uh,
briefly
Quite
boiled.
bitter or
Kind
bitter
of bitter.
leaves?
Yeah, kind of bitterish.
But so wait a second. So the meat is raw, but is there something inside?
No, no.
It's just meat.
It's just beef. Yeah, it's just like a log of beef.
Oh, okay. So it's one chunk, sort of one piece.
Yeah, I never liked it as a kid. But like my grandma, my mom, they would do it every Sunday in the winter. In the summer, not so much. Then another dish that kind of sits in between is cappelletti in brodo.
Mm-hmm.
So you might think tortellini in brodo.
Yeah.
The brodo, so the stock is the same, but the tortellini change compared to the cappelletti are a different thing because I mean tortellini are the like small ring thing shaped things stuffed pasta, and they're stuffed with mortadella, beef, parmigiano. Cappelletti is rather stuffed with every leftover meat that you have from making the stock, so that could be like a piece of chicken, piece of beef. It's that boiled meat that you just have the leftovers of with a lot of parmigiano,
Mm-hmm.
nutmeg, quite a bit of nutmeg, a little bit of lemon zest if you want,
Uh,
and then they're just cooked in the stock like you would cook tortellini. It's kind of the same, but the filling of the actual thing is different, and
so
the
just
shape.
for the people who are not familiar, in this part of the world, especially central North Italy, every city has their own kind of filled pasta. And especially in the Emilia Romagna region, very often they're eaten in a stock, right? Like the tortellini would be the most famous, maybe because they're from Bologna, they're more known.
Yeah,
But every city fights with each other about which one is the best, and they're all slightly different yet relatable, I could say.
yeah,
But so the one, it's interesting because the one that you're describing is obviously a sustainable version where you're actually using the same meat that you use to make the stock to make the filling, right? And
yeah,
then, so it's cooked meat because one of the other things about bolognas is that very often they put raw meat inside the tortellino, right?
yeah.
And there's prosciutto as well and mortadella and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that okay, so the tortellini, it's one of my favorite things in general. Dumplings in broth, I don't know what it is, like from Chinese dumpling in broth all the
Yeah.
way to tortellini, some of my favorite comfort food. Um, and okay, what if you have to give me one other dish?
And the third one I kept the most iconic. I kept for last, um, which is a combination of two recipes. Um, One thing that we call gratin. Gratin
Yeah.
is anything that you cook with a mixture of breadcrumbs dressed with finely chopped parsley, garlic, salt, pepper, and a lot of olive oil. So you
Oh.
have this like breadcrumbs that are very, very flavorful. They smell a lot of like parsley and garlic, and they're very oiled. Okay, they're very well oiled, and then you use that sort of as a sort of stuffing for tomatoes You cut tomatoes in half, eggplants,
Oh, okay.
peppers, and then everything goes into the oven until the vegetables are like quite melty and soft,
Mm-hmm.
and the bread becomes crunchy. And then those vegetables, you can do fish in that way too, like soles, sardines, um, mackerel, all the kind of fresh seafood that we find right outside the house, because we're on the Adriatic.
Yes.
Yeah, Renee, it's very, very good. It's delicious. It's even better than what it sounds. And then you have this combination of seafood, of fish, and you can do it also not clams because they're too small, but like um uh oh man, mussels,
Muscle.
mussels,
Yeah, of
and
course. Yes.
like all sort of that kind of thing. You can just put it in this bread thing and then put it in the oven. And then those vegetables, you put them in between piadina, which is a sort of flatbread.
Yes.
It's a flatbread made with flour, either pork fat or olive oil. Um, Usually milk, not necessarily. But the thing is that there has to be fat in it, and then you get this like flatbread, and you put the stuff in between, you fold it up, and you eat it in the summer on the beach. It's so good, even just for the experience. It's crazy.
Yes, the piadina is like a very iconic thing from that area that people might know in Italy. Obviously, it's not as good as the one that is made around there as a kind
Yeah,
of a flat bread. Some people, it's funny because when I discovered really good flour tortilla made in certain parts of northern Mexico, it's actually quite similar. It's a bit thinner, but because of the lard and because of actually pretty much the same ingredients, it's kind of in a similar direction. Just for if someone is listening from the United States to get an idea of
yeah,
what a tortilla is. Um, wow, that's really interesting. So, do you make this stuff at home in France?
yeah. I mean, actually, there's a couple recipes from Provence that are very, very similar.
Mm,
Very almost the same. Um, and well, Renee's saying that I've made these with vegetable. You've made gratin with vegetables. That's crazy because I feel like nobody knows it. So
yeah,
I
like
love hearing people who know about it.
it makes a lot of sense to me when you're describing it, but I can't say that I knew it as food from that area, you know?
Quite simple. You just make this big, and in the summer, because all these vegetables are usually there in the summer. So my memories from my childhood is always having a bowl of this bread mix in the fridge, because it keeps for a few days in the fridge anyway, and you just can keep it there.
It's
To
almost like a stuffing, you know, the
Yeah,
way it's conceived in the States, you know, like a stuffing
yeah.
that you can use things.
You
It's
can use
really
it for artichokes too.
interesting.
Artichokes.
But, oh, yes, for artichokes, yes. Can I ask you something else? So, I think I seem to remember that you come from a cooking family where people have worked in kitchens. Can you tell me about that? Or where did you learn to cook? Did your parents cook?
Oh, it was okay, my mother and my grandma for sure. Um, oh, we have a version for stuffing tomatoes this way in the UK and baking in the oven. That's crazy.
Hey.
Love it. Well, the more the merrier. It's such a good recipe. Everybody should do it. At least with tomatoes because it's the easiest. Tomatoes
Yeah.
are very easy to make that way. Anyway, yes, my mom and grandma, they were both professional cooks, and my grandma specifically, she was actually working for a while in Bologna as a sfoglina. So as
Oh, wow, really?
the pasta, yeah, for the big fairs, because Bologna's the big building where they do all the events.
Mhm.
They have their own canteen, and she was making fresh pasta for that back in the 60s, whatever.
Can you explain to our listeners what is a sfoglina? Because I maybe not everyone knows what that
Yeah.
is.
Regina is a woman, traditionally from Emilia Romagna, who makes handmade pasta with the rolling pin method. So you have a big wooden board. Um, you have a wooden rolling pin.
A really long wooden rolling pin.
There is a technique.
Yes.
You've seen? Have you watched? I actually watched it the other night. The episode of Chef's Table, like Noodles, a series.
Yeah, the first one, what's his name?
Yeah,
The American guy.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
very
great.
fascinating. What's his name? Oh my God.
I I can't remember.
It
Uh,
will come to me, but it's very fascinating because I've been following. He has a great series on YouTube about forgotten pasta shapes. He came to Italy and went to all these different old ladies because he wanted to learn one almost extinct pasta shape. So he's very committed, for sure.
yeah, that was a good episode. It was very nice to. It was very nice to see Bologna through
Yes.
that kind of ice. You know, it was. I lived in Bologna for a few years.
But it's funny because people, making pasta is such a normal thing. People think that everyone does it in Italy, but
Yeah, even
everybody,
funny. Yeah,
that's it. Thank you.
thank you.
Uh, but it's like most people would make it at home. It's very easy to make pasta, sort of, but most people use a pasta machine to roll it,
Yeah,
and this is where the huge difference is, obviously, in what this art is, this Fogline art, and the technique that is involved in rolling by hand super thin pasta.
and the argument for that is that the actual contact of wood with the pasta contributes to the texture, which you cannot achieve with a pasta machine because it's
Yes.
smooth. So, like the ability of pasta with the rolling pin method is is more porous, and you get
Mm.
a far superior way, like quality in the texture. And the thing about sfoglina, the thing about making pasta from Bologna is that, the rolling pin method, it might seem like the pasta machine is much easier, but the thing is that with the pasta machine, you can only get comfortably to do um, pasta for maybe three people, four, like without spending your whole afternoon doing that. Whereas you have this very long rolling pins in Bologna, and you can do maybe 10 eggs. 10 eggs is a lot. Like 10 eggs is a lot of dough to pull out at the same time. And with this specific technique that you can use with this very long rolling pins, you can make a lot of pasta in no time, which is great because, if someone in Bologna making pasta professionally, in Italy we still have a lot of restaurants that make their own pasta.
Mm.
And if you had to do that for a restaurant with a pasta machine, you can be there like even at night. You'll never be done. It's
Yeah, that's fascinating,
crazy.
when people don't think about this. So did you learn that from your
Yeah,
nonna?
yeah.
All the technique?
Every Sunday
Wow.
at my place, like we would get together because my grandma, like my grandparents, my parents, we all lived kind of close to each other. So every Sunday, we would all get together. My grandma and my mom and my aunt, they would get together making pasta, and they would make just a lot. They made
What
a lot.
would they make?
Um, a lot. They would make well, tagliatelle a lot of lasagna,
Hmm.
ravioli, which they would make specifically with the very classical filling of ricotta and spinach,
Are
and
these what kind of shape do they have in your area?
square. Basically,
Where?
they would just do a big sfoglia. Sfoglia is, the pulled out,
Yeah.
the rolled out dough. So like a huge sfoglia, round, and you basically had the stuffing they would spread on one half, like you would make a half moon of stuffing, fold it over.
Oh, like the
Okay,
whole thing in one place.
they just
Like
fold, yeah, they're like this big sheet of pasta. They would just fold it over into a half moon,
what?
and then you had like a rolling pin with squares.
Oh yes, I've seen
With
those. Yeah.
like with squares cut into it, and then you would roll the shapes into this half moon, and then you would cut the squares, so you don't have to like make every single ravioli. You just make a
Wow.
lot.
And there's nothing that gets caught in between each individual raviolo of the
Yeah, a
filling.
little bit, but like it would work out. It worked out pretty well. Yeah.
They were pros. They were like going for large numbers in quick
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Because then they would make like my aunt would take them home. We would take them home. My grandma had for the like whatever. There were a lot of people. There were every Sunday we were like, I don't know, 10, 12, a lot.
So you learn to cook basically at home with your family, right? Old school,
Yeah.
right? And is that do you think so? I presume also people didn't use recipes as in, this was all
Oh,
a occhio, as
that's
we say,
the
right?
thing. When actually, and what I love about this is that when I left home, and I would sometimes phone my mom to ask for recipes, and she's like,
Yeah.
"You've seen it countless times. You know how to do it. Like, what am I supposed to tell you?" And I'm like, "I don't know, like quantities." And she's like, I don't know. Just this is what goes into the recipe. Just try it out." And it was true that I had seen it so many times. I remember the first time I actually made polpette, so meatballs with the tomato sauce,
Yeah.
and they came out exactly like my mom's, because I was always there when she was working. When she was cooking, I was always there looking, trying. Sometimes I would try, I would help her do stuff.
Yeah.
But in the end, when you grow up in this kind of context, and I liked it also, because if I didn't care, maybe I wouldn't know how to do it. But I really liked it, and just by looking at it, I kind of absorbed what goes into it.
It's super interesting because I had the exact same story. I mean, my mom didn't work professionally, but she cooked a lot at home always, and never explained anything, never used the recipe. It was like completely a occhio, as we say in Italian, which is using the eye, is the literal translation to that. Using the eye. So when I moved out, when I was literally 19, and I started calling home, going, "Mom, how do you make this thing?" And she was like, "Well, it's easy. You just throw a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of that." And I was like, "Okay, but a bit what?" And she was like, "Occhio." And I used to get so mad. And and then I had a very similar experience, of trial and error. But the thing is, of being in the kitchen, first of all, you know what it's supposed to be like, which is already a huge starting point, because you know when it isn't right. You know what I mean? And then you usually can tell from the taste what's different and maybe what's needed. And then, it's just by being there and absorbing the energy, exactly the thing that you were saying, makes you already quite able to do it in a way because you've seen it, you've been breathing it. But the question is, because I know you've been working with cookbooks so much and you've been writing cookbooks and you write recipes. How do you translate that into a recipe? Like, that's
Um.
always a fascinating thing for me.
Okay, so I think that the our mom's method is nice, because what you need to do is you need to accept that the first few times that you make a thing might not turn out okay. And that is how I learned to use salt, for example.
Hmm.
I think that that is still the biggest challenge. If you accept that you might cook a thing two or three times and it might not turn out perfect, you learn, like, you develop the kind of instinct that lets you say, okay, this is like, I know, I feel, I developed enough of an eye to know that this is going to work because I do this, this, and this. And then when I'm at that stage, I try to remake the recipe, and I try to weigh stuff. So I like, okay, I know that I have to add this much olive oil, this much tomato, whatever. And then before pouring it into the pan, I try to measure it
Yeah.
and see if the final result is okay. And if it's not, I might like redo the same with another, like redoing the same recipe and just trying it out another time, but using the same method basically. Just try to. Okay, I would normally like just put in a glog of olive oil, and before doing that, I try to like measure out with a spoon.
Yeah.
And when I see that it looks okay in the pan, I'll just go on and do that for every ingredient, and then time. How much, like how long you need to cook something, which is arbitrary in a way, because it kind of depends on what kind of stove you have, it depends on what kind of pan you're using, on the material, on the actual quality of your ingredients.
Yes.
Is especially true when you're talking about protein. So it's like I like cooking, and I would like to talk about cooking in a way that leaves room for adjustment and error, because it's impossible that someone on the other side of the world who is not using the same ingredient that I'm using um, needs to learn how to maneuver. Like, you need to learn how to maneuver rather than sticking exactly to a recipe. And a lot of people at the beginning, when I still wasn't really very good with testing, a lot of people tried my dessert, like my cakes, for example, in America, and they were like, the texture is kind of different. And that was due to the flour, because the flour that they were using was
Very different.
wildly different from the flour that I was using. And the only way to maybe standardize it maybe is using flowers from maybe the same chain. So, for example, little, the
Yeah.
little flower that people say is very good for bread, for example.
Hmm.
Even then, you're not exactly sure that's going to work out. So,
No,
um,
that's interesting because it's like for me, there's so many connections to music. When that method that you described, I describe it transcribing a recipe, which is what a verb that I would use for music usually, transcribing.
yeah,
And I've been doing this with my mom actually sometimes, where
yeah,
I literally go back home and I say, "Hey, mom, can we cook together?" And then I force her to transcribe, to measure the stuff before she puts it in. Well, I do it for her, but
yeah,
you have to be very careful because there is so much that there is a work with of constant adjustment, right? And it's the
yeah,
same when you're playing music, so you have to kind of keep an eye on her because she will forget that she's added another glug of oil without telling you, and you're trying to transcribe it. But in any case, what I love about that is that because we're talking about oral culture, especially when we talk about traditional food,
yeah,
it's like most traditional mamas and nonnas certainly didn't like use a lot of recipes for this kind of stuff or didn't read recipes like
yeah,
that. Is that it's a transcription of the recipe that very day. She could be making in the following week, and it would probably taste quite similar, but probably the dimensions, all the measurements would be quite different. So I love that because I love it if you go and make a recording of a trad musician on that very day, we'll play in one way. 2 weeks later, we'll play in a different way. I find it it's so similar to a certain extent. But I love the idea of trying to learn. I mean, I call my page "Cooking by Ear" exactly because of this connection. It was Aokyo by eye, but also realizing that, as you said, all the micro adjustments that you're doing while you're cooking actually involves all of your senses.
mm,
It's supposed to look good. It's supposed, using your taste. I use a lot my ears as well when I'm cooking. I'm sure you do
yeah,
the same. You have a way of knowing when something doesn't sound right on the
yeah,
pan. You know right away, even if you're watching something else, right?
yeah.
So it's definitely this multi-sensorial cooking that is very interesting. I think there a question there.
There was a
Some
comment. Yeah,
If you eat a vegetable here in Ireland, so I guess James is in Ireland.
yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
mass produced, it has no flavor. Yeah, it's
Mm,
very tricky, and I think in general, as what Valentina is saying is that I feel like there are people who take recipes as like science, but
yeah,
I never see it that way. For me, it's like there has to be a basic understanding of what you're doing for you to understand a recipe.
yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
I have an example on that, and that's the reason why I wrote a guide to using tomato sauce. So when I was living in Bologna, at some point we had a friend. He was from Abruzzo, like the south of Abruzzo, so almost Puglia. And
Mm,
his family, so the south, like the sunny south. And his family had a garden, and they would make their own passata, as many people do. Like even my family made passata. But one day
anyway.
he came back he came back to Bologna from Abruzzo, and he gave us this bottle of tomato sauce that his family made, and still to this day, I cannot forget the flavor of that
Mm,
tomato sauce. It was incredible. It was the best tomatoes I've ever had. And that was just, I don't know, maybe 3 hours more south from like where I am in Italy. And we would not get those tomatoes because we don't have the same sun. So,
mm,
tomatoes specifically, I think, are very important as a topic because if you go north, like I remember in Ireland when I was there 2 times. I was in Ireland 2 times, and each time I remember, even in the good season, tomatoes just were not there. Like where they were imported from other places. So, like you cannot treat a fresh tomato in the north like a fresh tomato in the south, and even in the realm of the same area. So even if you're in Italy, if you're working with a very crappy tomato sauce, um, you cannot just treat it the same way as I would treat that tomato sauce that my friend brought up from Puglia, because
mm.
you need, it's true, they need a lot less when you have that kind of ingredient. Just add a little basil, maybe not even some salt. It's good to go.
Yeah, for sure.
So like
That's
when you're
one.
it's like learning to cook the way that our mothers do is crucial because it connects you to the land. It's not like okay, sure, I can make lemon tints and I can make a pavlova and I can like get this recipe coming from Australia, or like I can make some pastry from like from Norway, whatever. But the thing about cooking without a recipe is that I am connecting to my land, to where I am, to where I am walking, where I am living, cooking with food that has had the same air and sun that I've had, and that are eventually going to nourish me in a very simple, unfiltered way. And that's what our mothers did. So I feel that that is like what challenges me in the pursuit of writing a recipe, of like trying to write well a recipe, is that that is something that I cannot translate. Like I can make a Chinese recipe. I love Chinese food. I love Japanese food. We love Japanese food. We know it very well.
Yes.
But you have been to Japan. Like how close can you actually get to the actual experience of cooking something extremely simple from Ireland to Japan?
You know, the closest I've ever got was right after coming back from Japan. I made something with stuff that I brought back from Japan, and
Yeah,
I don't know if it was just that I was still so much in the spirit of it, you know. But
yeah.
I especially the rice. I brought like a really nice 1 kilo of super nice rice, and I was like, I nearly cried when it came out of the of the pot. It was so good, and it made me feel like the same way I felt, you know, in Japan. But so because you know both of us obviously write for a lot of people who are not living that experience, right? And they come from a different place. So the question is like, how do you translate that? How can
Yeah.
people learn to cook this way, or you know, yeah, to kind of get to their version of it? Because obviously it's impossible to recreate your mother's food for anyone, probably even for you exactly that way. You know what I mean? In that place. So
I'm a
yeah.
big believer in canned stuff, like in good quality canned food.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, Jules is saying tomatoes in our country, UK, compared to even in France, taste completely different, not in a nice way, unfortunately. Well, France has like here, Occitania. We're in the south. I'm like 2 hours from the Spanish border. But tomatoes here are very, very good, very good. And I feel that cooking with a very good exported sauce, like Italian jarred sauce, is still a better option than using crappy imported tomatoes. I mean, why not? You know, even some foods like sardines or like acciughe, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. And these days, that kind of there's
They're-
super high quality in tinned foods like that for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, tomatoes. I think tinned tomatoes are the basis of Italian tomato sauce culture anyway. Because you know, I think until it was invented, it was fairly regional and quite limited to southern areas that did passata that kind of way. But okay, so I think I mean we could talk literally for 7 hours probably. like, uh, but I want to ask you one thing, and then maybe we wrap it up. If anyone has more questions, please throw them in. I
go ahead.
so about music and food, right? So do you listen to music while you cook?
Yeah.
What do you like to listen to while you cook?
Oh, I like a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, I like a lot of folk music because just like food, I'm interested in the roots.
Mm-hmm.
So I like food music. I like folk music a lot. And aside from French folk music, like I'm in a Breton period right now. I'm listening to a lot of music from Brittany that I love. I just love it. And then I'm gonna show you some of my favorite albums
Yes, I was gonna ask you that too.
here. Um, and um, let me let me just show you. So, well, this is like maybe my favorite musician, who is Arianna Saval.
Oh yes,
You
of
know
course.
her.
Yeah, 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 of course. Yeah, she's the
She
daughter
was,
of Jordi Savall, who is, of
yeah,
course, an icon of early music and historical performance practice. But she does a bit of more of a mixed thing, right? With traditional
yeah,
music as well, Catalan music, and
yeah. I love Catalan music. I have, other than her, I have other artists that I started listening to who are Catalan. But we're also, as I told you, like we're 2 hours away from the border. So I have friends that are starting to suggest that kind of music to me. And I love Catalonia is just so good. It's kind of like Puglia when I was in there. I was on the seaside on the Costa Brava recently. It's very very Mediterranean. Like it's exactly what you expect from the Mediterranean. And this music embodies it so much. I feel like I listen to her music and it's harp, so I love it. I listen to her music and I really feel like I'm on the sea. I'm in the sunny seaside, like it's beautiful. I love her. So she is my favorite artist, and of course her dad too, and her mom.
Yeah. Yes.
So
And
like
I'm
just
very pleased to see you holding CDs because that's such a rarity these days.
oh yeah, I love them. I love them. And
Yes.
then I have your album.
Oh, come on. Don't do that.
Love it. I love this. I love it so much. It's
Thank
like
you.
I love your mix of jazz and music from the south of Italy. Music from the south of Italy is another thing that I listen to a lot because tarantelle, pizziche,
Yeah.
uh, tamburiato too. I love it too. But I love how every single one of your albums gave such a beautiful spin to both music of the south of Italy and music from Ireland, which is another thing that I love and listen to a lot. I love traditional Irish music and Irish harp music too, which is kind of niche. And then, so yeah, I really like that kind of, this kind of tradition music I listen to a lot. I then have sometimes I have moments when I feel the need to listen to stuff like rap or like South American music. I love that too.
Yeah.
But then yeah, everything a bit trad. I just really really like it, and thanks to you and your albums, I'm actually getting a lot into jazz.
Okay. That's great. That's great cooking music, by the way,
Yeah,
especially classic
I
jazz.
listen to a lot of. I just listen to a lot of music. So
That, that's great. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think we're gonna let you go because we've been chatting for an hour and 10 minutes. I think if
that's
anyone
fine.
has any more questions, we can take some more. Otherwise, we might wrap it up. But thank you so much for joining us. What do we have? I don't see any other questions here.
Yeah, yeah. If you guys have
Arianna,
any,
do you think I think I don't oh I think I lost you. There you go. I
yeah.
don't think I've ever met a musician that is not interested in food.
Really?
Yeah, it's like, do you think there's a connection in the minds of people? Is it similar mindset, or are cooks in the same? Because I know you worked in professional kitchens too, right? I never asked you that.
Yeah.
Are is it a mutual thing? Are cooks always interested in music too, or
I don't know. Not necessarily my experience.
I thought they're more like rockers most of the time?
Yeah,
But maybe I'm wrong.
but I see the link. I definitely see the link. Yeah.
James is saying 100%, but I don't know what to the musicians and the food people.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
I guess that for everyone who wants to relive this chat, and if they're not interested, don't trust them. That's good.
Which
Good
ones, the
point.
cooks or the musicians? You mean?
Well, the cooks and music, I guess.
Yeah.
But if you guys want to like relive this chat, we are gonna save it on our
Yes, and send it on, and I'm sure for the people who couldn't make it, will be available. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a great pleasure to chat with you, and I'm
Thank you.
sure,
A lot of fun.
hopefully, I have many more questions. I'm sure we can do it again some other time.
Yeah,
because
let's do a part two, definitely.
exactly, we have stuff to chat about for sure.
Yeah, and I
All
can
right.
interview you.
What?
I can interview you. You have a
Oh,
lot.
okay, sure. We can do that too. Yes, this is fun. All
Thank
right,
you.
thanks everyone who joined, and we'll see you soon again for another installment of this Tasty Notes. Thank you, and ciao
Thank
ciao.
you.
Ciao ciao.
Bye.
Bye.